Hello everyone, my name is Rohit Ghatol. Today I'll be talking about HTML5. A little bit about me. I work as Director of Engineering for a company named Zip. Last year I had authored a book called as Beginning Phone Gap, and I manage two groups in Pune. One is called as TechNext, which is around 1,000 people group. We meet every month to discuss various topics. The second one is pune-gdg. GDG stands for Google Developer Group. In fact, the same presentation of HTML5 was used, and I talked about it in the DevFest event in Pune yesterday. One note about this presentation is built in HTML5, although it's only been tested on Chrome, so I don't recommend you using any other browser for now for looking at this presentation. So let's just begin. Today we're going to cover a number of topics on HTML5. Instead of going deeper into the history of HTML5 or what are the organization behind HTML5, I would simply focus on what is HTML5 and talk about certain features in HTML5. So the topics are very simple. We're going to talk about new features in HTML. We're going to talk about new features in CSS3. We're going to look at new APIs. You're going to talk about what issues you will face when you go to a set out of HTML5 and how to decide on which feature you want to use, or how to go about the problems when you face problems which you face when you're working with HTML5. So let's just start. The first thing is all about HTML tags. This is a very simple thing. We'll cover the doc type, the basic syntax of HTML tags. We'll go towards new tags. We'll cover audio video tag in detail. We'll talk about canvas SVG for drawing, and we'll talk about new form elements. So let's just look at this particular slide. It talks about HTML4 page, and look at the first line, doc type HTML public, and it's a whole big line. And quite frankly, I think it's crazy for a developer to remember what this means. There might be many reasons why this line is there, but in terms of APIs or tags or syntax, I always believe these things to be much more simpler for the end users to play with. Next thing, you can look at the meta tag or the script tag. Typically, I've seen the only scripts which I've seen being included so far is JavaScript. So I feel the type text JavaScript is rather unnecessary. Similarly, I had the same feeling about the link when you're trying to put in the CSS of the HTML page. So if you actually look at HTML5 syntax, it's made quite simpler. Doc type HTML, fair enough. The script tag, you lose everything else. The link relation tab, again you lose a couple of more attributes. So this is nicer. All of this is not the most important thing, but you have to remember that you have to have your page having doc type HTML. That's the most important thing which you should note. All right, let's go ahead and actually look at something which is more useful. So we're going to talk about div health. Now, if I ask people what elements do they use most frequently in their pages, I get typical answer that's always a div. And div is used for everything, whether it's a header section, it's a navigation section, it's some information in footer, it's a main content, it's whatever it is, it's always a div. And you can look at these things over here. We're talking about divs. So let's just see an example of what is div health. So this is a sample HTML page where I'm just talking about a blog about HTML5, and if I just want to highlight some divs in this, you'll see everything in this is almost a div. The header is a div, the footer is a div, okay, the blog 1 is a div, the navigation is a div, everything is a div. If I go to H1, I'll see TechNext is the H1. If I see H2, that makes sense that I'm using H2 for the blog headers. If I go to the li, again it makes sense that I have li for listing certain bullet points. Similarly, I have got image and anchor tags listed separately. Now this is nice, but the main problem being this use of div. Use of div for almost everything. This creates a lot of problem. First of all, just for developers, I'm going to explain it very simply. If you don't intend your code properly, and you're using a lot of divs, and you lose track of where a div is not ending, it becomes difficult. But then people will argue and say there are good enough tools to detect that and fix that problem for you. And I would say yes, there are. Let's take a look at a bigger picture. Let's talk about search engines. For example, Google crawler. It's very important that when any program reads your web page, they understand it much better. So in this example, if the Google crawler comes and looks at the page and it's looking for a div, and that's not true of a Google crawler, but let's say a typical crawler comes and looks at the divs. For the first instance, they will look at divs. They will say, okay, since all of these are in divs, the content should, all the content of these divs should be treated equally. Now let's say you have 5 websites just talking about HTML5. Some of the website have a header which talks about HTML5. Some of the website, has a small link to HTML5. The crawlers will look at these aspects that, okay, I only have one link to HTML5, so probably this page points to HTML5, but it is not about HTML5. At the same time, if I have a header about HTML5, yes, there seems to be more prominent information on this page about HTML5, so it should be ranked better than a page which contains a link to HTML5. Now, crawler looks at much more factors than those, but I'm just simplifying the problem, to a very simplistic form for you guys. Just look at another example. We're talking about section, article, headers, nav. You guys ignore this div. This is supposed to be nav. Sorry about that. So you got a nav, aside, article. It's the same thing, but you got fancier names. Now here, if you look at this particular thing, if I look at article, look, I got 2 articles or 3 articles. If I look at headers, I know that these are the proper headers. If I look at section, I get now that the data is contained in this section. It's important. When I say aside, I know that this is aside from the main content. Similarly, navigation tags, this is a navigation to different sites. So looking at these information, definitely a program or a human being would be able to understand that, okay, different things mean different. So what happens when you use a section instead of a div, or an article instead of a div? The simple answer is nothing is different. Just replace your divs with section, article, header. These are only semantic tags. They will not bring in any new functionality. If you have a section or a aside, if you have an aside, don't think that something will be put aside. So if you have an aside tag, don't think that it's automatically going to go on the side. No, it's happening because of the CSS. Typically, as is happening for this particular div. So simply replace your divs with these tags and put the content in proper places. There is no additional styling. There is no additional functionalities which these tags gives you. They are only divs with different names. And you have to understand it very well. This is to bring about a standardization when people write websites. That articles have something more important. Headers have the description of that. Sections may have the content of that. Navigation will have the link towards that. Aside is less important than the article. So these norms will come up. These tags are basically built and introduced to introduce those norms. This is about a section, article, nav, and aside tags. Next important tag is the audio video tag, and this is very important because of what's happening with Flash, really. Before I talk about this, let me simply play this video. This is a video from Madagascar. It's hosted somewhere, and I'm just pointing to that particular video. And I can pause it. I just stopped it actually, not pause it. And I can control it also from over here. So this is very, very important given the fact that flashes or silver light are going out. People do not want to rely on external plugins for a browser. More important so because uh, iPad doesn't support these plugins. More important, you don't want to install all this. And browser is becoming a next OS in itself, a standard OS which runs on all the systems in a simplified manner. So this is very important that you should have more and more abilities to work with the media files inside your browser. Now here, if I right click, you would not see the typical thing which I see with Flash videos, which is a Adobe Flash coming over here. And if I show you if I inspect this particular element, you would see it's a video tag in itself over here. A couple of files. So this is a video tag. And if I look at the next div, it is my controls with play, pause, and all these things. So this is why this is extremely important to be understood. Now if I take you to the next slide, it shows the source of this thing very well. So for video tag, for videos, you simply have a video tag. All you require is a video tag which starts and ends. You have a width and height. So you decide the size of the video. You may or may not have an ID, and then if you put controls over here, you actually get this control bar over there automatically. So it's a self-sufficient tag. Now you can control this tag by using JavaScript. Now here I'm just trying to get the access to my video, and then I can say video element.play, pause, or current time. So when I'm moving this slider left and right, it's actually changing the current time of the video, and the video starts from different time. Now all that is very, very clear. What may not become very clear is why do you have 3 source files? Why not 1? And the answer to that question is because of patents. We all have heard about the patent fight of Samsung and Apple. That's the height of the escalation which is there. And it's quite real. When we see this fight, we understand that patents are becoming more and more of a problem, and companies would shy away from using anything which are patented because they'll have to pay for it. Not only that, for certain formats or certain things, the patents are not very clear. There are conflicts. The companies would shy away from these formats as well because they do not know whether it's allowed or not allowed, or whether they will be sued or not sued. So with this, what happens is many companies came up with new royalty-free or open source formats. This format is Theora format. I think it's from Mozilla. I'm not a great expert at who does this format, so this is more or less a guesswork. The next one is MP4, and the next one is WebM. WebM is from Google. So if you talk about formats like MP4, if you talk about formats like H.264, these were the oldest format or older formats. And for them, it's not clear what's going to happen with the patents. So typically people would end up using OGG or WebM more than other formats. And that is again my guesswork. I do not come here as an expert on patents and formats, but this is the reason over here. Now there's one more thing, that when you look at a file, video file, look at a format like OGV, MP4, and WebM, these are merely containers of media, which could be audio or video, and then you have this codecs. This codec actually contains the information in what format are they coded. This is what I roughly read about the video tags. So the most important thing is you can now play your video and audio without need of flash, and you can control them the way you want. Next thing is Canvas and SVG. Before I go there, I would like to, you know, remind you of the days when things were quite different. Even to get a good-looking website with rounded corners on sections or buttons on a website, you needed a web designer, and the page used to be quite heavy. People used to use divs in a weird fashion. They used to have these rounded corner images, and they used to put the images in certain divs. They used to put a similar background image in other divs, and they used to make the rounded corners work. And this is only about the rounded corners. It was so difficult to get rounded corners without any designer helping us. And just to get the rounded corners, uh, we needed to load up, the browser needed to load up a couple of images. It needed to process a lot of div and a lot of CSS. And that was simply crazy. The good thing is, with the advent of Canvas and SVG, you can accomplish things which are much more complicated than uh, rounded corners. Obviously, CSS3 supports rounded corners by default. I'm just giving an example that if rounded corners was so difficult in the browser world a couple of years back, think about drawing things on the canvas. Think about having a PowerPoint presentation inside your browser. Think about some games running inside your browser. So this is the complexity we're talking about. The canvas is a special element available in almost all the browsers, where you just say canvas, give it some ID and just close it, and then you access the canvas using a normal document.getElement by ID. You get a context, and here we're trying to get the 2D context. The rest, everything is English. We're saying that I want to fill it with the XYZ color. I'm beginning to draw my path, and I'm basically drawing an arc. This here is actually a circle. So this is a red circle which you're drawing, and we're saying close path and fill. So this path fills in, and you closes and you fill it, it's filled in. Similarly, this is the code for a next circle, and this is the code for a rectangle. It's a very, very simple concept over here. So although it looks like drawing is very simple, especially when you have these APIs like move to a point, line to a point, arc to a point, close a path, fill it up, and add a border to that, etc., etc. These may appear very simple. Apart from that, what you can do with the canvas is you can scale a canvas. You can actually say, I want to make things look bigger. I want to move objects around. I want to transform them further. For example, I want to rotate them, do something else with them. And then we have this APIs called as context APIs called as save and restore. It's very important to understand how these APIs work together, because drawing is not as simple as it seems. If you want to get inside drawing, the same principles apply whether you're drawing on AWT, Java, or Android, or other things. So we cannot simply talk about the principles behind drawing these things. So let me ask you a simple question. We're trying to draw this rectangle, this black rectangle, which is 0, 20. Then we're trying to draw another rectangle at 40, 80. So it's very easy for me to draw the first rectangle and then calculate that, okay, if I want a second rectangle below, I need to do some plus and addition on the XY coordinates, and then I can draw a rectangle over here. What I want you to guess next is this rectangle which is slightly tilted. I want you to guess the XY position of the first point. And to make life further difficult, this is a fourth rectangle is a scaled down version of that. So when you scale it down, again its XY position is bound to change wherever it is. Now this will remind you, if you have computer science background, this will remind you about matrix transformation. Those the matrix to matrix multiplication, talking about computer graphics and all those things. And as a programmer, we would not like to focus on maths. We would like to focus more on simpler APIs so that we can achieve what we want and get the business value out of the programming language. So, very simple example how to go about this. First of all, you save context. Now this is the old days, when we were in college, we used to work on C, C++, not C++, but C, and we used to have these global variables, and we used to change the global variable left and right. Now here again, drawing is more like a procedural language. So you work with global variables a lot. And because you work with global variables a lot, you need to change them and roll them back. So at this point, let's just look at the first method called as context save. I won't tell you much about it, but let's just go ahead. I'm then drawing a rectangle over here, and then I'm filling the rectangle, and I'm adding a text. And then I'm saying restore. Again, ignore the save and restore over here. In the next step, I'm saying save, and I'm saying translate. When I say translate to 4060, I'm actually changing the 0 to this particular point. I'm actually saying to the canvas that your 0 has changed to 4060. And then look at these lines of code. These lines of code is exactly the same as these lines of code. Because I just moved the 0 itself, my rectangle would draw a different location. Now once I'm done drawing this thing, and if I try to do anything, it's going to assume 4060 is the 00. And now I don't want it. And that's the reason I had done a context save over here and a context restore over here. So when I say restore over here, whatever was a 00 before this point is restored, which is like the 00 actually becomes 00 instead of 4060. So here I'm kind of rolling back these calls which affect the canvas global properties. Similarly, we'll look at a couple of other things. In this case, there's a small mistake. This context save is not supposed to be there, so ignore that. In fact, I'll just let it be. This needs not to be there. So in this case, I'm again doing a translate. Then I'm doing a rotate. So because I do a rotate, I don't need to guess what is a new X file or calculate. The entire canvas is rotated over here, and then I'm just storing it back. In this case, there's a save, and there's a translate, there's a rotate. Forget about this context save. This is wrong. Then I scale it down like this, so everything becomes smaller. And then I do the rest of the things, and I restore it. Again, this restore is wrong over here, but you get the concept. Next thing is a game concept inside a canvas. Now in this case, the idea is very simple. You call up a function called a set interval, give it another function, and say that, hey, keep calling this function every 100 milliseconds. So this function keeps on getting called every 100 milliseconds. Now in this thing, you have a couple of objects. One thing is this red rectangle. So you know that there's a XY over here, there's a XY over here. So you know the bounding box. Second object is this black ball, which is moving. So in the manipulate model, what we do is the ball starts from over here. Let's say this is 0, 0, and this is 100, 100 for some reason. We'll say ball starts over here. I want to subtract both x and y by 10, 10, 10, 10 until I reach this point. When I reach this point, I want to subtract from y, but I want to add x, and so on. This is what I do in manipulate model. So in one manipulate model method, I'm moving the ball by, let's say, 10 towards x, 10 towards y in different directions. Then I'm going to clear the canvas completely, make it blank, and draw the model wherever it is. And this way, you can build a nice brick game where you can have bricks on the top, and you can have a bar which is moving because of your mouse over here, and you can calculate all these things and enjoy a nice brick game. Next thing is the SVG demo. Now in the SVG demo, you will see that this rectangle, another rectangle, two circles over here. And instead of programming or writing them in code, you can write them differently. So SVG is nothing but a text, which is enclosed in SVG tags. It's XML actually, more than a text, it's XML. Here I'm drawing my first rectangle. This is my second rectangle, which is being rotated. This is the text which I'm showing, and these are two other circles. And to this also, I'm applying a style sheet. Now the next thing is a line, a rectangle, and a text. So in this case, it's a line, a rectangle, and a text. I've grouped them together. And to that group, have applied a transformation of rotation. So switches are very simple, effective manner. In fact, if you see this arrow things over here, if you inspect them over here, you will see that this images also are SVG. And if I actually do a view source on this, you will see that that's SVG in a text file. Okay, that's pretty simple. Next thing is the new form elements. This slide is more or less taken from HTML5 rock slide. I was a bit lazy to do something, and plus it's not so important. It's simply adding more new form elements. So if you see this text box, it has a red border indicating there's something wrong. If you fill it up, it becomes blue. That means everything is okay. In this case, if I just say this, it becomes as validation, and if I say .gmail.com, it's suddenly green. So the type is email over there. Type is date. There's a min and max value which you can go. It's a current value. It's a range object. Step ranges. Telephone field with a pattern. Color picker. Steps. Such. So all these things are fine. Not too great. You can use them. It saves a lot of coding effort. But they have to get standardized. They're not fully standardized across all the browsers. Next is CSS. Now CSS, as I was talking about 5-6 years back, we used to require a designer to simple things like rounded corners. So I actually needed, not one dev, but 5 to 7 devs for simply showing something like this. Today it's very simple as WebKit border radius 50. In fact, the proper code over here would be WebKit border radius 50, Mozilla border radius 50, and followed by simply a border radius 50. And people will wonder that why do you require this WebKit and this Moz prefixes. The thing over here is in HTML world, it's the browser companies who dictate, more or less dictate what's going to happen. So they introduce some cool feature like rounded corners, and similarly other browser companies at near about the same time also do the same thing. So pretty much they try to do the same thing with similar codes, and then the code also is different. So let's say a border radius on Chrome is typically 50px, and it when it draws it does it by 50px. And let's say, for example, on Mozilla, when you put a border radius 50 pixels, due to some calculation, it actually is 48 pixels. For example, just a dummy example. Now, if you just say border radius 50 pixel on Chrome, it would look exactly the same. 50 pixels. On Mozilla, it will be 48 pixels because of some internal calculation, because it's different. So the idea here is you put in this prefixed things over here. So for Chrome, you're writing it differently. For Mozilla, you're writing it differently. And for future, just border radius 50, you're writing it differently. So as the browsers they graduate and they get updated and they respect border radius, they will start ignoring the WebKit border radius and start using the border radius itself. This is how you have to code. This is the reason why you require number of WebKit mods. There's also Opera. There's also -ms for I think Microsoft. So you have to do those things. I'm a bit lazy, so I'm not writing everything over here. In this case, second case, you're just trying to give different radius for different corners. Very simple. In this case, you're giving different rounded. It's another way of writing the thing we just shown above. And then you can have elliptical radius. You can have the major axis, minor axis, and you can simply make a div circular by looking at the width and looking at the radius. Similarly, you can have solid shadow, you can have a blur shadow, you can have an RGB shadow, you can have two shadows, you can have inner shadow. So keep on going on to your own time. I won't waste much of your time on this. You've got gradients now, and this is very important. See, when you have maths, a lot of things become easier. Vector graphics, calculation of color radiation using maths is so much powerful than using images instead. Because when you use images, you got a fixed size, and they're gonna either pixelate, something's gonna happen, and not image. All the images are vector based. They're always almost all raster based, pixel based. They don't work well. This is some example of gradient properties. For text also, you got text shadow, text inline shadow, text stroke. You got text reflection also, which is pretty cool. And all these things work very well because everything is hardware accelerated nowadays. And browser gets the full power of the graphics card. One of the biggest problem in the web world till 3-4 years back was the use of font. What are the safe fonts? If you actually go on the web, you can't use fonts like you use in your Microsoft Word document or in your desktop program. There you can just include font files and use them. In the browser world, the browser has to provide you the font. There's a list of safe fonts which is available, which says, okay, almost all the browsers, they support all these fonts, so you should only use that. And that gave a designer a very limited font choice. And that affects the design of a website. Now onwards, you can simply import a font and use it, which is very, very powerful. Now the next is CSS transformations. Now we have the typical things as, styling of divs and things like that. But now think, once you have a div in place, what would it take to move the div left and right? And I'm not talking of moving it left and right with the margin property of itself or the padding property of the parent. No, I'm talking about simply changing the XY. So if I change the XY, I actually move the div around. If I change the rotate Z, I'm actually doing all the kind of transformation. And see, not only this, I can combine the transformations over here. I can skew it and I can scale it down. So all this is possible now simply with this WebKit transform. Now in this case, again, it's a WebKit transform I'm talking about. You have Mozilla transform, you'll have other transforms, and ultimately a simple transform property will be respected. Now we saw those transforms, they look nice, but if I'm doing many transforms, look at this over here. When I click on this, suddenly this div, which was yellow in color with a black text, became a red background, yellow in color, scale down and rotate it somewhere. Now I didn't want it to just disappear from there and appear from here. The div below does a transition, it's happening smoothly. So all I'm saying over here is transition and saying, hey, all the properties which you're changing from class A to class B, take 1 second, use this algorithm called as ease in and ease out to gradually change all those properties so the user sees a transition. Now instead of all, you can just mention that, okay, the border needs to change very slowly, the color needs to change very fast, so you can keep on repeating these things. So instead of all, you can talk about individual CSS properties. Instead of 1 second, you can have 0.5 seconds or more seconds, and instead of ease in and ease out, you can have much more things. So there's a website over here which you can visit to see the example which he's saying, and I think it's a good idea to go there and actually look at it. So if you see, this is how the algorithms affect. Let's go back and let's go back to our CSS transition page. This is all about CSS transition. Next thing is the animation. Now in this case we are doing something on the hover or something where the user did something or programmatically we did something. What about I always want an animation effect without me doing anything? I don't want to use JavaScript. I don't want the user to do something. I want it to happen all together by itself. I want a rotating banner on the top. I want a casserole which rotates on itself. A lot of things. It could be anything. So in this case, you do two things. You define a keyframe. Ignore the WebKit part. This is again, making it very browser specific. So keyframes, and you're saying this is the resize animation. Here you're talking about at 0%, these are the CSS properties. At 50%, these are the CSS properties. And at 100%, these are the CSS properties. So you're laying out a frame by frame, values. So the padding would be 0 at 0%. At 25% it will be 0 and 10 px, because it's half of it. At 50% it will be 20 px. So gradually things will move. And then you are talking about animation name which you want to use is this resize. The duration for animation for 0% to 100% is 2 seconds, and you want to repeat it infinitely. So look up, take a look at CSS animations, look at it, read more about it. They are not supported everywhere, but they will eventually come to all the browsers. This is an advanced CSS demo. This div is rotating all by itself, and I just hover over it. Now things just change like anything. So this is all CSS, no JavaScript. Next thing is the APIs, and we'll talk about number of APIs over here. And this is exciting world, because for people who want to code or they're into more client-server programming, they will love this. CORS. So CORS stands for cross-origin request something. So let's come back to the original point. If I have a website which is hosted at say mywebpage.com, and I want to make a request to make a request to yahoo.com, the browser won't allow it, because the origin of the page, the domain of the page, and the domain of the server it's calling through Ajax is different. This is because of the single origin policy. Go to Wikipedia, read about single origin policy. That's why you know that this is not allowed. So what do people do to allow it? So what I do is, for mywebsite.com, I'll actually call a server which is again hosted at mywebsite.com, and there I'll put a proxy. And this website, this web page will make an AJAX request to my proxy server, and the proxy server will forward it to yahoo.com, and that's how I would get around it. Second thing is a thing called as JSONP, which is based on scripts, JavaScript. Now you have a web page, you can put in JavaScript for any domain. So that uses that fact. So again, read about JSONP on Wikipedia and this and what it is. I'll not go into deep inside that. Next thing is CORS, and let's look at CORS, what happens. So this is, let me just try to move it out so you can see everything. Okay, something is wrong with the CSS, so give me a moment. So in this case, I'm trying to call Rohit Ghatol rhcloud.com traditional. This is a website where web service hosted over there. And if I do Ajax call, it fails, saying this origin is not allowed by access control. And at the same time, I got a different website hosted on the same thing, and it's different thing. It's CORS, not traditional. So I'll just change the URL, and it's a different program which is handling this at the backend. And if I say get, I said New Delhi. If you don't believe me, I'll just say Vietnam, and you'll get an I. The reason it works is because the server puts these two things in the response, saying that okay, my response can now be consumed by anybody, which is star, or by XYZ, where you actually put domain names, comma separated. So this is what actually CORS is. So CORS is more like server side only. You don't have to change things at the client side, but on the server side, the server has to support it. So I guess I read about this, that YouTube supports CORS. Again, I'm not confirming it, but that's a great thing, because then you can have your web page posted anywhere, making Ajax calls to YouTube, getting feedback about some videos, getting some information about videos, or searching for some videos, and you showing the contents over here. So that's a great way of working around. No more requirement of using a proxy behind the scene or using complicated JSONP scripts. Next is a server-side concept. Now here, I'll have to tell you a story before I go and explain what is what. So first, when we're developing these Ajax sites or web applications, People wanted this that the web application should update itself regularly. There's if there's new information, like some alerts coming from the server, or if I'm showing some charts on graphs on a dashboard, it should continuously upgrade itself. So the first solution which people came across was that there will be a loop inside the JavaScript running inside the browser, which would constantly poll uh, the the web service to ask for more and more information. It's like saying this. It's like somebody giving a call to the customer service, or somebody giving a call to find the stock exchange values of a particular company. And especially this is bad in a case where the stocks of that company do not change, you know, every 5 minutes. They change, let's say, after every 7 to 8 hours, or they change after a couple of days itself. So imagine me being a person who's receiving these calls. There are people who are just calling me and saying, "What's the stock price at this moment?" I tell them this is XYZ, this is 10 points. Again, they call me after 5 minutes, and again they call me after 5 minutes. Or much worse, again they call me after 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds they're giving me the same call, and I'm saying it's 10 points again, it's 10 points again. Now, the browser may not suffer very much from it, but the server does, because think about the number of clients who are there, who are just requesting this information. It's massive, and for every request, I will actually have to go and hit my database if I'm not having a very optimized system. Even if I have optimized system, I'll be using a CPU at my end, and I'll be doing the same thing again and again for no reason. So the server gets loaded when you have polling. So people came up with this concept called as comet or hanging git, or something called as reverse Ajax. The idea is the server should tell the client that okay, this is the update. So in this case, it works this way. The client calls me on my cell phone, and they say, okay, I understand it's very annoying for you if I call you after every 30 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll call you and I won't hang up my phone. I'll keep the phone running for next 15 minutes. And you don't also keep it down. The moment you have any new update in this 15 minutes time, just tell me that on the call and cut the call. And the moment you cut the call and you give me new information, I'll again ring you back, and we follow the same protocol. For next 15 minutes, the client won't cut the call, and the server will only answer on the call if it has new information. Now, in case the server doesn't have any new information for 15 minutes, he would simply close the call after 15 minutes. Simple as that. This is what is called as comet or hanging git or reverse Ajax. The reason it's called reverse Ajax is, the client sends the request, but the server responds in its own sweet time whenever it has new information. So with this case, instead of getting 30 calls in 50 minutes, the server only gets one call in 50 minutes. So the load gets down to virtually very less time. Second advantage is that there's not a delay of 30 seconds at the client side. The moment there's a new information on the server just gets it back. So imagine if the ping time for the client is 5 minutes, even though information updates on the server side at much earlier, the client won't receive the information for 5 minutes. With the hanging gate, because the call is already in place and the server just responds immediately that okay, there's a change, take it. It's much better. The server-side events are much more like reverse Ajax, comet, or hanging get, but there's some differences. So we'll just go and look at that. So the client sends HTTP request with a MIME type event stream. The server caches the connection and writes the header content type. The server now keeps on putting new information on this connection. This connection is not broken. This connection is kept alive. The connection break, the client reconnects. Now, I would not answer or would not go deeper into the protocol because I do not know the protocol. I'm simply excited that for a browser, there's a new way of getting information, and for a server, there's a more efficient way of getting information. So instead, what we'll do is we'll actually look at the protocol and what actually happens in the program. The protocol is very simple. The server has to put this information, like data : this is a message. So this means that this is a simple message is being sent from the server to the client. Remember, servers and events are based on HTTP protocol itself. So they work on port 80 or 443 for HTTPS. So no new things needs to be done. So it's very safe to use, but the server needs to support it. If I want to send multiple lines, I just have to repeat data colon, data colon, data colon, data colon. Okay. If I need to send the ID, and the ID is important because sometimes the client can be down. The server is sending 3-4 information, and the client only received the information for 33, yeah, and it died, and the server attempted to write more information. It never went to the client. So the client, when it connects next time, it will say, hey, last time I got information for the message 33. Now you start pushing me information from 34. Otherwise, the server might send information from 37 because it thought that all the in-between messages were received by the client. Also, if you just put an event over here, instead of a simple data, this thing becomes an event. It becomes an event called as price changed, something like that. So it's a custom event. So the way it works is you say source, event source, you connect to the server. Now there's an on open callback, which is called when the connection is established. There's an on error callback, which is called when the connection is broken. On message is called for all these things because it's simple message, and you can get access to the message by saying event.data. In this case, the data would be concatenation of all these things together. In case of this particular message where you're putting an event, this guy is called. So here I'll say source.add event listener, price, and a function. So I'll say got data, event.data for price. So there's an example which I have, which is running, and the source code is taken from this particular thing. So if I refresh this, this is an example where the server is just sending the message after every 5 seconds, new time. So every 5 seconds, the server is actually sending the information, and the client is receiving it. Next thing is WebSockets. Now WebSockets is very exciting because it's a full duplex TCP/IP communication. Now think about this: AJAX calls or server-side calls. I'll give you a scenario, and I tend to give simple scenarios for people to understand them. In case of AJAX, it's like a radio communication between a private on a battlefield and a I don't know, colonel, in a headquarters or behind the scenes. And the colonel says the private basically makes a call to the colonel saying the enemy is in these numbers, give me permission to attack. And when he's talking, the colonel couldn't talk. And then he says over and out. That's where he says, okay, I'm done with my communication. Now you reply back to me. What do you want to reply back to me? The colonel says, I want to know more information. Do they have artillery? And he says over and out. And that's where he's done from his part. Response comes back. And now the private again says, they don't have artillery. Do we have permission to attack? Over and out. And then the colonel says, yes, you do have permission to attack. Go ahead. This is what AJAX really is. It's a radio thing which is not full duplex. It's one thing at a time. Second thing is server-side events. The server-side events are more like a broadcast happening, where the kernel is sending information to the private all by itself. So the private does connect to the kernel first time, but then private cannot say anything. The kernel won't even know in what the private is, but the kernel will keep on saying that there is an artillery strike happening, move to this location, or there is an airstrike being called in, move out of that location. So it's a constant broadcast happening from the kernel to the private. Now WebSockets is more of a new way of communication where they have satellite phones and both parties are talking to each other, continuously. It's not happening that one person is talking, another person is, waiting for his turn to talk. That's what WebSockets is. But WebSockets do not work on HTTP. They require a separate port being open. They are more like TCP/IP. So in WebSockets, I won't cover the server-side code, but I'll cover the client-side code. This is WebSocket. So connect to the socket, special URL, into this port. Callback for open, callback for close, a method to send the message, and a callback to receive the message. So the server side also there's something typical where the server side also has server.send and server.onMessage in case of Node.js. So it's full duplex. So it can at the same time do send and at the same time receive things. Example of this is shown over here, where this is a WebSocket example which I taken from internet. This is my name Rohit. This is it's Amit. So I say hi, and it receives it and says hi Rohit. Um, how are you doing? And right now I cannot show it to you parallelly because I'm only one person, but you can just use this example, open multiple browsers, and just connect to that thing and receive things in real time. This is what WebSockets is. And it opens a lot of possibilities. Collaborative editing, like you have in Google Docs, game playing, a lot of things can happen. Next thing is web workers. Now in this case, we're talking about having web sockets for doing runtime, data, getting data from the server and doing all those things. Okay, you got more and more chance to get data in different rates, but the browser is still a single thread model, more or less. People typically use set timeout or they make Ajax call to simulate multi-threading environment. In fact, it's not even multi-threading, but let's just say to make things simple that you only have multi-threading when you are making Ajax call or when you're doing set timeout. But in those things also, if you do things for long, it's going to hang the browser. So over here, I'm doing this canvas example where we have the set timeout or set interval where this function is being called, and I'm trying to figure out the Fibonacci series 40 times. So when I say Fibonacci, the entire UI threads or the main thread hangs. So that's not good. In this example, I'm going to use a web worker to run the Fibonacci calculation outside the main thread of the browser. So in this case, see, it's calculating, but this is not stopping. It's going on conveniently. Again, it's going on conveniently. So let's just see an example of that. So you got work, let's start with the worker thread. So in the web worker, this thread runs on a JavaScript interpreter, which does not have access to anything in a DOM. It can make some Ajax call, it can import some scripts, but this won't be your typical, scripting, JavaScript scripting where you think, okay, I'll use jQuery to modify something or use jQuery Ajax call to do something. No, this is different. In this case, there is no DOM element available. It's running outside the browser. You can say window in a JavaScript interpreter. So here I'm saying a callback that if the main thread gives me a message, receive it, and then I'll pass the message. I'll run my Fibonacci calculation, which will take some time. When it's done, I'll post back the message. In this case also, I'm creating a worker thread by saying that run this particular JavaScript in a worker thread. Then I'm saying post a message. 40 is passed, and I have an event listener saying that if you get a message back, output it. So it's similar protocol over here, and so on. So storage. Let's come to the storage part. There are primarily 4 ways of storage: local storage, session storage, WebSQL. WebSQL is now deprecated, so we'll skip it, and IndexedDB. So local storage is nothing but a key value pair where you say local storage dot preferred country, or you use associative array syntax where you say local storage bracket preferred country, and you're setting the value of a key named preferred country to India. And if you want to access it, you just say local storage or preferred country. Now, session storage is a similar way, just a name value pair, but local storage is permanent storage. So you store it once, it remains there irrespective of whether you close the browser, close the PC, and get it up again. It will be there. This is ideal for storing user preferences. Session storage, on the other hand, is for a session. So if you close the browser or close a tab, it's gone, and that's for a different purpose. So let's say you're browsing on two different the same site on 2 different tabs. You want to keep a track of which page number you are on, and let's say that's temporary. You would use session storage. If you are storing what articles I put into shopping complex in my shopping cart on the client side, probably you can use local storage. So Different, same syntax, different purpose, not too difficult to understand. IndexedDB, let's see example. So I'm actually putting in a to-do list. And again, in this example, if I close the browser, come back again, it's stored. IndexedDB is much more powerful than simple DB, local storage, because you can search for elements. You can, you can put elements by key. You can have a structure stored. You can do various operations on it. So it's different and more powerful. Now I'll actually skip this example because I really want to complete uh, this presentation in time. You can go to this code quickly. I'm opening a request to open a DB connection. On success, call this thing where I'm just storing the DB object in a window, my DB. On error, I'll show it. So IndexedDB is versioned. So before you start storing information in IndexedDB, you need to have object store. So you say that, okay, I'm setting the DB version to 1. That means I'm initiating the database, and the version of the database is 1, and only on its success I can create a object store. So here I'm creating an object store called as to do, so and so. In this case, I'm retrieving my retrieving things. I'm creating a transaction from my already stored DB object. Then I'm retrieving the object store. Then I'm creating an object over here. Then actually I'm putting the store in the data in the store. Simple as that. Then on success, I know that data has gone successfully. On error, it's not. Similarly, delete functionality. So I have my DB, I get my transaction. From the transaction, I get my store. Then I do my CRUD operations on the store. So that's simple. Now here's the next. Come to the next example of offline access. Now in offline access, you have a website where you want to access it offline. And offline means many things. In this case, it's a Rajnikant website, and typically Indian people will understand more than US people. When I say Rajnikant in India, it means check notice. In US, so it's the same concept. You're saying, Rajnikant website, you say, hey, you cannot access it online, you have to go offline. So I'm gonna go make it offline, and yeah, now you can access it. It's a kind of a joke, but that's what it is. Check notice, Rajnikant doesn't really matter. So what's happening over here is you get events when you're offline or online. So you can check in a browser by navigator.online to see whether you're online or offline. Plus the window can throw events saying offline or online, and that's where you can understand whether you're online or offline. Next thing is this entire website which I developed, rohit.github.com HTML5 demo. This is all offline. So even if you load this once and then you close the internet connection and you put this thing again, you'll be able to load it because there's a cache manifest. It tells the browser that, okay, all this information, you need to store it. So next time somebody puts in the rohit.github.com HTML5 demo, even if you don't have internet connection, go to your cache, local cache, and try to load the information from what is available over here. Now again, I won't go much deeper into that. There's a lot of material already available on this front. So if you had to truly build the offline application, you had to use a couple of things. You have to use the online and offline events. You have to have the manifest cache because you need the JavaScript and HTML code, the business logic available when you're offline to run the business logic. Third thing is you have to have the data store, the local storage. So the way it works out is, number one, you put in the manifest file, all the HTML files, CSS, images, and more importantly, all the JavaScript. At the same time, you talk about what URLs need not be cached by putting in under network, and what URLs need to be changed by putting under fallback. This way, at least your page loads up when you're offline. Next thing is you have to have this switch. So you have this JavaScript function which can go and fetch information and then show it on the web page. Now when it fetches the information, the deal is this. Use the event handler or use the navigator.online to figure out if I'm online, I'm going to go to the Ajax. I'm going to make Ajax call to the server to fetch the information and show it. At the same time, when I fetch the information and show it, I'm going to put it in a local storage. Now, if I'm offline, I wouldn't even bother to go to the Ajax to the server by using an Ajax call, but I'll simply look at the local storage to fetch the information. So that's how your entire websites can be, offline. Of course, you cannot have access to the latest information. Next thing is geo service and sensors. Now, in this case, I'm actually using uh, uh, a API, and that API is actually pointing to my house in Pune, and that's what I'm showing on the mouse. Next thing is this iPhone thing. Now I'm shaking my laptop, and I got a MacBook Pro. It knows that it's been moved, so I'm having orientation details. So here the call is very simple. I'm gonna say navigate to the geolocation, get me the current position. I'm gonna get two callbacks. If everything goes okay, call this callback with the position. If not, then call the error callback with the error message. This way you can get the current latitude to longitude. This is more relevant towards the mobile browsers. Similarly, device orientation is very simple. You just say window.add event listener device orientation, and you get alpha, gamma, beta properties. Again, more relevant towards the mobile browsers. Next thing is the file system drag and drop. Now this talks about two things. One is that you can drag and drop items from desktop onto your browser and actually process them. Second thing is a browser now has its own local file system. Now a program can actually store files inside the file system and access it. This is not the same file system as a desktop file system because browser is a sandbox environment. You don't want any server to put anything on the OS's file system. This is browser's internal sandbox file system, different for every domain. Now in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my manifest.cache file and drop it in my this area, and I'm going to say ls. When I say ls, you will see that I've got this manifest.cache file listed over here. Now here I've actually created a mini terminal, and if I say help, you'll be able to see that okay, all these commands are there. So this is a mini terminal where I can say clear, I can say pwd, I can even say cd because there's a directory called as that. I can say ls, okay, and if now I take this another file called index.html and put it over here, and I say ls, I get two files over here. And I do this, I'm outside, okay. This is how it works. I can also create a new folder, and you can see all these things over here. So this is an example where I'm using drag and drop. So in this case, there's a div with the ID Dropbox, and I'm adding events to it for drag, enter, exit, drop. And on drop, I am getting the files and processing the files. Similarly, over here, I'm kind of initiating the file system of the browser, which is temporary file system of the browser. And on success callback, I get the file system, I store it. On error handler, I do something else. Then I use the same file system object to get the directory listings for root, and I can now read the files and show them. So you can go through these APIs in your own time. Remember one thing, it's always calling other functions from the callback. So if I want to initiate the file system, if everything goes okay, this function, if it goes wrong, that function. Now in the success callback, you again say, okay, now I've got a file system. Now I want to access this directory. This is my success callback. This is my error callback. Again, the success callback, you will say, okay, now I've listed the files, and I probably want to write in the file. So it's always in the callbacks, and the callbacks is the way you code on HTML5. Quickly, we'll cover this topic in next 5 minutes, which is problems with HTML5. Now, fragmentation is a very well-known problem. I don't want to go deeper into that. There are different features in HTML5. Every week, new features appears. Every week, every month, every couple of months, there are new versions of browsers being put in. Different browsers, different HTML5 versions, and different support. And this is not easy. So how do you handle this thing? So very simple. there are two decisions you have to make. One is a design time decision and one is a development time decision. Now, for a design time decision, you have to actually understand what will work for you. So if you want to use, let's say, the Canvas API, you need to understand, is it okay for me to use Canvas API? Who will tell me that it's safe to use the Canvas API? That's the HTML5 please site. So if I say HTML Canvas over here, it says green, used with polyfill. So what it's saying is Canvas is good to go on all the modern browsers. And if you want support on Internet Explorer 8 and below, there are a couple of polyfills. Now polyfills are JavaScripts which people have developed, which actually simulate the HTML5 feature, but underneath they use something else. So in this case, the Explorer canvas or the Flash canvas that actually uses Flash to actually render the canvas, but it has exactly the same APIs as a Canvas API. So if you just include that file for Internet Explorer, you won't even notice a difference as a programmer that okay, things are working, things are not working. So this is how it really works out. That is what really polyfill is, and it's saying all good to go as long as you're using the polyfill for older browsers, especially i8 and below. Let's say IndexedDB. It says caution with fallback. So what it's saying is this feature is still not settled down. So apart from Chrome and Firefox, and i10 wants to have it, Opera doesn't have it, and Firefox doesn't have it. So what do you do? So they're talking about a polyfill for IndexedDB, which internally uses the deprecated protocol of WebSQL, which makes things more difficult. Again, if you want to use the HTML5 elements like the footer, header, all those things, it's saying good to use with the polyfill. What it is saying is for Internet Explorer 8 and below, you need to use a JavaScript called HTML5 shim in your header. This JavaScript runs and it converts all the header, footer, nav, article, section things to divs. So that's how it says that. So use HTML5 please site to understand what to use, what not to use. Similarly, there's another site called HTML5 test which helps you. Second thing is at runtime, you need to take some decisions. For example, you want to use WebGL. Now let's just look at WebGL for a while over here. WebGL is caution with fallback. But you really want to, it's important for your business to support things wherever you can support. So let's say we are seeing that more and more, we are more concerned about people who are on Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And for Internet Explorer, if this feature is not shown, it's okay. So I have a page where I'm showing a 3D skeleton of a human body. Now, this skeleton is a 3D skeleton in case of Firefox, Safari, and Chrome, but in case of it's simply an image of a skeleton, a 2D image of a skeleton. And that works for the business. It's not so bad actually, because earlier also I used to have this 2D image. Now just because HTML5 comes into picture, I want to show more. So over here, you wanted to detect at runtime, irrespective of which browser I'm in, you just want to ask the question, hey, does this browser in which I'm running, does it support WebGL? If yes, then I'm going to show this 3D skeleton, which it can rotate, or else I'm just going to stick to a 2D image of a skeleton. That's what is called as feature detection. So Modernizer is a great library for feature detection. So this is a site called as Modernizer. So Modernizer doesn't actually gives you the functionality, but it helps you detect the functionality. For example, let me show a simple example first. Okay, it's not over here. But anyways, what you can do with the Modernizer is, load the Modernizer, test that I have Modernizer. Let's say WebGL. If yes, then I'll use one JavaScript. If not, then I'll use some other JavaScript. So in this case, let's say you have a JavaScript which actually loads either the 3D model in a div, or it loads the image in a div using an Ajax call. So now the functionality is modularized. What to show in a div for skeleton is modularized. One module is where it shows a 3D, WebGL thing in the div. The second module which shows image making an AJAX call. So you can just say modernizer.test .load test for modernizer.webgl. Yup, you can have one JavaScript. Nope, you can have different JavaScript. Similarly, it has much more to it. You can see it, you can go through it in your own time. It's a very good framework, I recommend it. And it not only detects the API feature, it detects CSS features as well. So you can take a call. I'm not an expert in this. I just recommend you to go through that. So having said that, with these two approaches, using HTML5, please to know what to do, what not to do, and using modernizer and polyfills, you can either gracefully degrade or you can simulate the same functionality using polyfills. Now that's all from my side. If you want to contact me, that's my Twitter handle, that's my LinkedIn location, that's my homepage. I work for a company named Synerzip. We do a lot of great work in HTML5. If you guys are interested in outsourcing some work, or in general, if you're even interested in asking some questions to me, please feel free to contact me. Thank you so much. And that actually concludes the presentation.